Good morning. Scott and I are going to be doing our mailbag later this afternoon, probably early evening. So we'll get that out tomorrow morning. But in the meantime, here is yesterday's MLB Mondays. This is a Patreon exclusive, but you guys can listen to it for free because we're just in a good mood today. So enjoy. This is what you missed out if you're not a Patreon. Please consider subscribing and supporting the channel. Patreon.com/The Walk Off Podcast. Morning.
Good morning, Al.
How are you?
Not too bad. How's your day going?
I'm all right. I'm getting over this cold, and I thought I was past it, and now I woke up with a tingle in my throat again. So I'm worried. I'm hoping it's nothing, but we'll see.
Well, I'm sorry, man. Hopefully, I wish you all the best that just gets the hell out of your system.
Thanks. Scott should be ready. He sent me the notes for MLB Mondays, so the we're gonna mostly talk about the Hader signing with the Astros
Mm-hmm.
and Anthony Rendon's comments on too many ball
The
games
shortened
this
season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, I just had a little mini panic attack. I was gonna say Scott hopped on too, but you have Instagram, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you follow Alec Manoah?
I don't follow Alec Manoah on Instagram. Hold on. Let's start.
Go look at the picture in his story right now. Tell me if that inspires confidence for his conditioning heading into this season.
Ooh. Alec Manoah camp is what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of contradicts the that one image of him working out.
I
Oh,
mean, you can catch anybody at an unflattering angle. So
yeah, the
I want to give him
montage
the benefit of the doubt, but that's a husky looking picture, man.
the montage that he has at his camp is a bunch of images of unflattering angles. So
Oh, I didn't look that deep. You're not making me feel any better. Oh, now I got to look even deeper.
yeah, especially when like you can go click on
Oh,
this,
yeah.
which is like you can click on a one of his reels where it's like him in peak form, and you're like, oh, that is a different form. That is a different figure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does not inspire too much confidence, that's for sure.
I mean, it could be the shaggy hair and the beard, but he looks like a young John Candy and not in a good way.
Oh God.
This is, oh man, so bummed out right now.
Well, I'm sorry, dude. Yeah, that is not the most flattering imagery. And he needs to have some flattering imagery.
Yeah.
Did he get married in the off season?
Um, Looks like wedding photos from December 10th. Yeah. I mean, maybe he got pregnant on the honeymoon for all I know.
Damn. Damn. Yeah, there, yeah. Only got married.
Damn. I don't know. I'm rooting for him. It's hard.
Yeah, it really is. And he lost a season of like his arbitration gets pushed back a year because of
Hmm.
he's the one who taught me that that was even possible to like
Yeah.
come in, do a full season, do like a season and a half, and then get shuffle down to the minors and have your arbitration years pushed back. I'm like, wow, you can do that later.
Yeah. I know. I thought once the clock started, it started. I didn't know it was still a moving window. Hmm.
Um, the hater stuff is interesting. Blake Snell is really interesting when they're saying that like 150 is kind of the max that he may go for, which is wild because Hader gets 100 and like the two times Cy Young winner in different divisions. Can't get half of what the 25-year-old unproven star out of Japan gets.
It's what does that say about the human condition where we all, not all of us, but I mean, broadly speaking, the value that we place on like potential,
Very
it's
true.
just like, yeah, it's crazy to think about. Like you said, unproven. I mean, whatever. He's been proving it in Japan for a while, but it is not the same caliber, regardless of what happened at the World Baseball Classic. So,
He's a 5'10", 170-pound dude. And
is
it's
that
a
how big he
pitcher,
is?
right? Yeah, he's only 5'10".
Tiny.
It's like a little Stroman out there. That's a lot of stress to put on your arm when you're 5'10", getting it up to 99, 97.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the breakdown will be up this afternoon. And then hopefully
Sweet.
by Wednesday we start seeing we'll start seeing people submit for it tonight.
Cool.
But
Cool,
yeah,
cool,
it'll be
cool.
fun to start putting together our top 100s, I guess.
Yeah. Be good. Let's hear.
Morning,
Good day,
Scott.
guys.
Good morning. Is that a yellow hat?
Sure is.
Oh. Is the Jays
You,
logo normal blue color?
it's the regular blue color, yeah.
Looks like a tinge
It's
of red in it. Am I mistaken?
there's a red outline to it,
Okay.
and then the patch I think has like
Mm.
a red. I've worn this one before. This is old news, but it is one of my faves. It stands out, you know? It's untraditional.
I think I've come around on what's a word I can use that won't be.
I've worn you down with the different colored hats, is
You've
what it
worn
is,
me
right?
down on the different colored hats. I was gonna say gaudy. I was gonna say
Yeah,
flamboyant.
yeah. I would
Um,
accept both of those.
okay. I think the deal breaker for me, because I mean, my wife talked me into the all black hat, which is
Yeah,
even this is too
which
colorful for me.
I mean, it
Um,
looks sharp on you though. And you were kind of against the all black, but it looks really good,
yes,
man.
yes, thank you. Um, let your woman dress you is the lesson there. Um,
Yes,
but I think because so I was looking at some of the interesting colored hats, over Christmas shopping season or whatever. But I think the deal breaker on every one that I saw was that big side patch.
that's fair. That's fair. It took me a while to get used to the patch, and
Yeah,
now I like it. But honestly, I didn't like it at first.
yeah.
So I don't know what that says about me, but just that you can put anything on me and I'll eventually like it. I don't know. I have a
Whichever
football question for you, Adam.
Okay.
Did you watch that game last night?
Uh, yes
Bills
and no.
and
I watched a
AC.
condensed version of it, but yeah, I watched all of the fourth
Okay.
quarter and I skimmed through the first three quarters.
And you know darn well I'm not a football fan, but I had nothing else to do and watch the game. And wow,
Yeah,
what a game to watch too! It
yeah,
was
that's about this
awesome. Like,
fumble.
no,
Okay.
my question is, is it not weird that the Philadelphia Eagles Jason Kelsey was wearing Chiefs gear? Like, is that not like I'm gonna tell you right now, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk would never do that. Like Matthew Tkachuk, like I remember Brady coming to Flames games when Calgary was in the playoffs and cheering on Matthew, but he was still he was all in Senators gear.
Yeah, I never thought of it before.
It's the only way he gets to hang out with Taylor.
I
Yeah.
guess so, way. You got to put on the Chiefs gear or no Taylor for you.
Did
Well,
he retire though? The elder brother.
We don't know yet.
Well, he played
Okay.
this year. I mean, he did the documentary last year, and then there was the question mark at the end of it, kind of a thing. But he did come back and he played this year.
Yeah.
And
But
then
they got eliminated though in the first round.
Yeah, I think he had like a tearful kind of retirement moment on his brother's podcast. I don't know if that
Is
I
it
don't
his
know if he's
brother's
official.
podcast or do they do it together? I think it's a co-host situation.
Oh,
isn't
maybe
it?
it's a co-host situation. That could be.
Anyways, I don't know. I've never actually seen it other than the odd clip on TikTok. But yeah, I
If
guess
I was an
that's
Eagles fan, I would hate that, man. I would hate that. And I've got two brothers that I'm super close with, and I understand supporting the family and stuff like that. But at a point, it's like it's like if my brother played for the Yankees, I still wouldn't cheer for the Yankees. I don't give a shit, man. Like I'd
yeah, I
cheer
hear
for
you.
my brother. I'd wish him all the best. But the Yankees, come on.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe football's different. I've never actually I've never played. I didn't grow up playing football or anything like that, so I don't know what the culture of football is. Yeah, the Kachuk brothers don't host a podcast together either, and they're
No, they
much
don't. That's true.
younger, right? They're what, in their
Yes.
20s?
Yes,
Mhm.
they are.
So that might come with maturity. Like Travis and Jason both have Super Bowl rings.
Yes.
So I think that also probably plays a part in it.
Plays into it.
When you're both like, all right, we're both champions. We're gonna still have to be family at the end of this. But I think when you're probably age is a bigger thing than a sport, hockey versus football, is just when you're
The
a
dream.
young, arrogant, still trying to prove yourself, trying to pick, who's the better brother in the family. I don't know.
I mean, Taylor Swift would probably never date Matthew Tkachuk. I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, and there's the
MLB Mondays. It is MLB Mondays, so hello to the Patreon.
We
Go
had
ahead,
one of the
Joel.
softest intros of all time as Joel and I kind of just hung out for 10 minutes. He's out. He's over it. He's had enough. He's gone.
So.
Oh, he's literally gone.
Oh, he's literally gone.
Fucking done with us.
We have offended Hey Kami, and now he is no longer. All
That's
right.
the
Well,
goal.
I'm
Once
sure
we're
he'll
off the
join.
rails, we've weeded out the casuals, Joel included.
Yeah, that's right. So my list is, it's funny, dude. I had so many messages from people being like, it is so impressive Adam did anything on Friday because nothing has happened. And that was actually one of my talking points that I sent you was like,
Yeah,
nothing continues to happen. I mean, the Blue Jays still have some bats they need, obviously. So we'll touch on that really quickly, I guess. I don't know.
Man, I tried to come up with a top 10 list for what I want to see this season. I came up with 4 things on Friday.
You're like, let's make it a top 4. That classic top 4 list.
Classic
yes.
top 4. Yeah, David Letterman, top 4.
I'm in Miami right now, and this airport hotel I'm in, dude, like my view, I'm just gonna turn my computer around to show you guys. But it's just like
straight runway, right?
Just all runway. There really is no palm trees or the things I was looking forward to Miami. After this, I'm gonna take an Uber downtown, but yeah.
How long are you
like,
how long are you laid up then before you got to go on your next cruise? Sorry, gotta go. Get to go.
Well, I fly out tomorrow morning to Antigua, and then I hop on the ship there the next morning. So Tuesday morning.
You gonna be here for mailbag
Wednesday
then?
morning. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't think so.
Okay. No worries.
Unless we can do it later in the day.
Tomorrow, yeah, probably. But just in
Yeah,
case,
if we can.
send me whatever you get from Twitter and stuff, and
Okay. Yeah.
we'll make something happen.
Yeah, sounds good.
Tell me how your shows went then before we get into baseball. Everybody wants to know. Super clean cruise ship comedy. How did it go?
Oh my God, dude. It was interesting. It was definitely interesting. I've never played shows like this. And
how many did you do?
So I did 4 shows in 2 days.
Right.
The first night was a 10, 15, 45-minute PG-13 show. And then the next night was 3 30-minute shows that could all be the same, but it had to be PG. And
PG.
Yeah.
Can you even talk about weed in a PG show?
No. Oh no, I didn't even talk about weed. I had one line. I have one line where I talk about when my wife thought I was going to propose to her. Hey Joel, welcome back. Right. My wife thought I was going to propose to her. We were like on this big romantic 7th anniversary like celebration of dating, and we had like walked to the end of this long rocky pier in the ocean, and like the sun is setting and everything. And I literally, like, this is a true story. I turned to her and I was all excited. I'm like, oh baby, you're gonna be so excited. I came prepared for this moment. And I kind of sort of kneeled down, and I didn't even know, like, she didn't tell me what was going on in her brain until like 2 days later, because she was like mad and weird for the rest of the night, and like I really had to pry it out of her the next morning. But like, I, in this half kneeled after telling her she's going to be so excited moment, and I'm so glad I came prepared, right? I pulled out a joint and not a ring, right? So like that was the only even mention of weed, and even that got tight. Like it was weird too, because
I didn't even like speak to you after and was like, hey, cut the drugs.
No. Honestly, man, it was weird. Like no one was really paying attention on the ship. Like I went and talked to the cruise director afterwards, and she was like, well, we had no complaints. So that's really all we're after. The age range though, I've never had an age range like that. Like it was like literally 18 to 90.
Wow.
And dude, the majority of the people were 60 to 75. And like the amount of references that went over their head that just land every single time, right. You know, like I was talking about.
So you know when you're watching Netflix.
Even like talking about jumping on trampolines. Like everyone was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like
I was born before they were invented. By the time they were a thing, my knees didn't work.
So anyways, I guess what I'm saying is like there were a couple good shows. There was one real rough one where it was just like 30 minutes of like, I felt like a dancing monkey on stage. You know, I kept doing this because my trick was in a 30-minute set. I'm like, well, if it gets really quiet in here, I can just run. I have a wireless mic, right? So I just like go off the stage and literally went into the crowd, start high-fiving people and being like, come on, let's get the energy up here.
Oh my God. Did you have to do that?
Oh yeah, man. A couple times.
Really?
Yeah, a couple times. I felt very Danny Martinello, Drew Bamish at times, right? Where I'm like, I'm not this energy guy, but I had to dig down deep and pull out energy because no one else was. It felt very like a succubus, the crowd. Like the crowd was just sucking my energy and not giving anything back. You know how audiences like to laugh and give appreciation and give back? No. So it was a learning experience, and I can tell I'm going to get better at it. Like crowd work really is the way to go with these shows. But
was there any children there?
No. Thank God.
So PG, but everyone's still 18 plus.
Yeah. Well, they're all 60 plus.
Wow. Right.
I had a 6:30 show, boys, that literally there were old people. Like there was only about 25 people there because it's 6:30. Everyone's eating. Who goes to a show at 6:30? The only ones there were people like literally 80 plus almost. And there were still people falling asleep in the crowd before I started. I'm like, this is fucked.
Amazing.
So I don't know. I did by the end be like, this is something that I'll do maybe once a month. Like the
Yeah.
money's really
The
good, and
money's
it's the
good,
only
yeah.
reason I'm doing it. But like the the warm and fuzzy feelings you do comedy for, yeah, those were not
Are you
involved in
enjoying the
this.
rest of the cruise otherwise? Like your time between shows, do you get to go and like enjoy the
Yeah,
cruise?
yeah, but I'll be honest, man. Like I was on the ship for 44 hours.
Yeah,
2.5 hours of that was performing comedy. About 14 of that was sleeping.
sure.
There was about another 4 hours that was just involved in the red tape of figuring out my rides,
Mm-hmm.
checking into hotels and into my flights, and like because
Right.
it was a crazy schedule. Like I flew the red eye from Calgary to Fort Lauderdale, was there for an evening, jumped on the cruise ship, was on the ship, but had to still like arrange my rides from Jamaica because I hopped on in Fort Lauderdale, got off in Foulmouth, Jamaica, get to the airport, I'm checked in there, fly to Miami, I fly to Antigua in the morning, I hop on a ship for another 40 hours and I'm back in Fort Lauderdale to fly back. So like,
Not a
yes,
holiday.
there's moments, it's not a holiday. Like there's moments where, yeah, like I'm sitting on the deck in the sun and I'm like, this is awesome. But it's not like I'm just relaxing. Like my brain's also like, ah,
Yeah.
45 minutes of clean material to old people. Ah!
Right.
While people in walkers are walking by me being like, hello, where are you from? I'm like, hey,
Um,
don't come to the show.
is your wife, you said your wife's coming to the next one? Is that like
I
the
don't know if she's
immediate
going
next
to
one
now.
or
No, not this one here in a day.
in a
I have
couple
another
weeks?
one in a couple weeks here that
Okay.
I'll be hopping on.
But
So
after this
I don't,
one, you're talking
I
her out
don't
of it?
think so. Yeah, like I don't see how she would enjoy just being on a ship for 40 hours with a completely nervous wreck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I don't know, like they let her on the ship and everything, and so she's covered for that, but she still has to get her own flights and all that, and it's just like I
Yeah.
don't know if it's worth it. Like
Yeah.
if she wants to go on a cruise, let's just go on a cruise. Although
Just go on a
it's funny, just
cruise.
what I could find myself feeling is I'm like, after I do a couple of these, there's no way I'll ever want to do a cruise for a vacation.
Recreationally.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like even
It's
as I
just
got
ruined
off
for
the
you.
ship, I was like, good riddance. Like,
Good riddance.
yeah.
I've never been on a cruise, like big mega cruise ship. Is it like,
It's impressive. It is
okay,
really
hold on.
impressive.
Relative to like the Tawasin to Victoria ferry, bigger than
Yeah.
that?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And there
Good
were
then.
times, man,
Do you
like
feel the motion of the ocean? Are you getting like seasick
a
out
little
there?
bit.
Or?
I don't get seasick, but I
Oh,
can see how some
you can tell
people
people
would.
would. Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I would have thought at that
But
size that it would be pretty like
it's
pretty stable. Yeah.
pretty stable. There's only moments because
Yeah.
it's the ocean, right? Like
It's the ocean.
it is pretty cool how fast those ships get going though, man. Like I got outside, especially at night, they're ripping on it. They are ripping on it. Like you're seeing them pass birds as they fly. Like it was pretty cool. I know I got
That's cool.
outside after my show the first night I was on, and it was like 11:30 at night. And like I found myself getting sick looking down at how fast we were going, just being like, who, like, you know,
Disoriented,
that
eh?
kind of anxious feeling where you're like, fuck, if I fell in, I'm
Yeah.
just gone.
You're
Like I'm
fucked.
just gone. Like they wouldn't even the ship would be so far past me before I even got my wits about me, you know? Like
Yeah. No kidding, eh? There's no yelling up at the ship either, eh? You're
no,
probably a few
no.
stories down.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. It
Crazy,
was,
crazy.
and man, what a business. Like what a big business. Like they've got everything down to a T. It was crazy. Anyways, we're way off the rails
Have you
here.
it's fine. We have another 40 minutes to fill and no baseball to talk about. People want to know, Scott. They want to know what you do outside of the podcast. So this is good. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed this. Have you ever done any shows with like small children in the audience?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't like me.
No, I did. Okay. When I was pretty early in my comedy career and I was in Red Deer, I did a show in Sylvan Lake.
Yeah.
We were opening it was the grand opening of this new restaurant, like fancy restaurant right on the lake. And I don't know why we got brought in to do this. Mike Dambra was headlining, and then I was opening, and Greg Plett, Greg from Red Deer,
Yes. Yes.
was
Oh,
middle.
what a squeaky clean kid type of show, too.
Oh yeah. So I mean, I was still we didn't know this was an all ages show for one.
Right.
I don't think whoever hired us knew that either. But we go there and it's like fancy thing, and there is, I would say, probably 100 people in this restaurant, all at the tables, and probably 24 children under the age of 10. It was a quarter of the room was all the people's kids. They were all sitting at one table, though. Like, all the parents were on their dates, and then all the kids were at the kids' table. It was a very interesting dynamic. I did my set. It went as good as you could expect from a first-year comic. And then Greg came on and was just like, before the show, Greg and Dambra and we were all just like laughing about how ridiculous it was, like that there's kids here and like hopefully they leave and blah, blah, blah. They didn't leave. And Greg just went, I mean, I guess to his credit, was just unapologetically himself. For anybody that doesn't know Greg Plett, is just, how would you
The
describe
best way
him,
to
Scott?
a gay Crocodile Dundee?
Well, he's not gay, but he is.
Oh,
He is.
maybe I'm thinking of a different guy.
You must be. He is the long Jesus hair welder with big gross meth beard.
Okay. Never mind. Oh no, I'm thinking of that guy.
Okay, he's
Isn't
not
half
gay.
his set about sucking dick?
Oh yeah. But he's not gay. He's as homophobic as it gets.
Right.
Maybe a closeted gay.
But he'll do gay things.
He'll do gay things.
And he'll talk about it on stage.
He'll talk about it.
Not gay though.
Not gay. I think he's married with kids now. Anyways, he went on and was just like doing crowd work to the kids' table.
Amazing.
And just teaching them the most vulgar words. Just literally like saying, so here's what you're going to do when you go home. You're going to go home and you're going to call your aunt whatever. And just like insert, this word or that word. And it was just wild to see. Everybody was just like quiet and uncomfortable, but nobody like got their kids to leave. Like, Greg just went for 15 minutes explaining what like 69ing was to 8-year-olds, and all of the parents were just like, but no one would like do anything about it. And then of course Dambra came up and killed and totally saved it, and they got the kids out between Greg and the headliner. But was Dambra was probably thrilled because Greg went up and did what he was supposed to, was clear the kids out of the room so Dambra could come in and do his set, which is not a clean set either, free of children. So Dambra was probably thrilled with it.
It's funny how there are so many things that could, and I never thought of this because I remember when I did my, it was a family friendly show at a campground. And there were kids there, and I didn't even think of this. And I did this joke. You guys have never heard it. It's a super old joke. I dusted it off and did it on the cruise ship. But I had to double check because I'd learned my lesson. I'm like, is there kids in the crowd? So basically the joke is my cousin Jeff, he's substantially younger than me. He has these cargo pants, and he's always got things in his pockets that are like super fun and cool. And his pockets were bulging one day. And I was like, what's in there? And he pulls out this like plastic toy giraffe. And I was just like, I don't know. Even looking back, I'm like, I shouldn't have said this, but I was like, giraffes aren't real, right? Like, and he was mad. He's like, yeah, they are. I was like, no, they're not. Look at that neck. What are you going to tell me next, Jeff? That unicorns and dragons exist, right? And then the rest of the joke basically goes like, yes, that seems horrible. And yeah, the comic in me should have backed off at that time. And I even felt guilty afterwards. But you know what? In a world where kids are constantly growing up and having these things taken away from them, right? Like, first, Santa Claus doesn't exist. Bad move to say in front of kids, by the way. Right. Next, the Easter Bunny doesn't exist. finally you find out God doesn't exist. Of course, on the cruise ship, I'm like, the tooth fairy doesn't exist because let's not get into religion.
Right.
And anyways, the punchline is basically just as everyone's taking away, guess who's giving back? Old Uncle Scott. Guess what, Jeffy? Giraffes exist. You're welcome, right? But nothing like going to your cruise director and being like, hey, are there Santa Claus restrictions on this thing? Like,
oh my God. All right. Well,
all right. Let's try and talk some baseball here, right?
Let's talk some baseball, yeah.
Did any of you hear the Eric Kratz, Davis Schneider interview?
Yeah, I watched it live.
The
on foul territory or whatever.
Yeah, foul territory. So before we even get into this, I do want to say foul territory rules. I love foul territory. It's actually such a great show, and I do quite enjoy Eric Kratz. Even though he does look like the biggest 50-year-old douche with that backwards hat. It is insane how some people can pull off a backwards hat. He is not one of them. But he came out and basically, offhandedly too, was like, hey, Davis, what is the most annoying question that you get regularly? Obviously, you're up in Toronto. We all know they don't know anything about baseball. I'm paraphrasing, but that was kind of the sentiment, is that Jays fans don't know baseball. And then he was like, is it something like, hey, what's it like being related to your manager? Which, of course, rubbed all Blue Jays fans the wrong way, as it should, especially considering it was such a genuine moment. Like, there's trolling, and then there's just you being a shithead.
Condescending,
and it was just so much of the condescension side of the scale.
To the player who has the hottest start of a career in Major League Baseball history, that's what you want to know. Hey, how shitty is your fan base? Yeah. I don't care about your record start to the sport that's existed for 160 years.
There were some great jokes about it. I mean, even like I retweeted, I was like, first you have that horrible question, then you put down Jays fans, as we say here in Canada, strike two and you're out. So
pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good. I was reading the comments on Reddit about it, and there were some pretty good ones too. It was like, can you explain what it means to have a negative 0.1 career WAR in hockey terms? That's Kratz's career WAR, by the way. I
read another one too where it was like they gave us stats as a Blue Jay: 40 games, a batting average of 198. Everyone keeps talking about how you were chasing the Mendoza line. Can you explain what that means?
That's awesome.
You know what's funny is there were a lot of people that were super offended, and I don't know. I just kind of laughed it off. It's like, okay, buddy, like, you want to act like Canada doesn't. It's like if Canadians act like Americans don't know hockey in this day and age. Like, it's 2023. America's producing more hockey players than any country in the world right now, even more than Canada. In fact, if we go to the Olympics, the Americans are probably the favorite. Look at the freaking talent they've got right now. Like, hockey's growing huge there.
Well, so all of our great NHL players from the 80s and 90s who played in Detroit and St. Louis had kids there. And like we just talked about the Kachucks right off the top, right?
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. I'm like, it kind of started with the Shohei Ohtani stuff, right? And the way that
it really feels like a pile
commentators were talking about how it's good for baseball that he didn't go to a small market like Toronto and whatever. And everybody gets so worked up about it. And I'm kind of in the same boat as you just said, Scott, where I'm like, I don't really, maybe it's because we're West Coast. Like none of us are from Toronto. So when everybody's like, fuck Toronto, the three of us are all just like, hey, that's our team. Whereas everybody else is like, that's my identity. I am Toronto. Boy, we're losing a lot of fans already with this one. But no,
luckily
it's just
a Patreon exclusive.
Well, everybody's unsubscribing.
There's only like 20 of you watching this. We
Um,
appreciate all 100 plus of you, by
yes.
the way, in Patreon, but I know darn well there's only about 20% that are watching these Patreons.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you made a good point about like the hockey, and that's what I was thinking of too, right? Is like it's it's a stereotype, and it goes both ways. And like we just talked off the top too about like the football stuff, and like none of us know anything about football. And I think broadly speaking, most Canadians probably don't know
Baseball as
that
well as
much about
Americans. Yeah.
baseball. I mean, but that's probably also true about most fan bases in the US too. Like I don't know how many of the Cincinnati population, how many of them are like avid baseball experts versus the ones that go to the games. I don't know. It's
Let's get right into Anthony Rendon then, because I know that's another comment that maybe other people were more worked up about than I was. So
read it.
I'll read out exactly what happened here. But so to start with, this is from the Jack Vital show. It's a podcast, and he had Anthony Rendon on of the Angels and asked one thing he could change about the game, which, by the way, a very good question, Eric Kratz. Maybe take note there. That's a pretty darn good question to ask. And Rendon's answer rubbed baseball people the wrong way, and even myself included, until I took some time to think about it, right, and calm myself down a bit. But he was like, we got to shorten the season, man. There's too many dang games, 162 games in 185 days or whatever it is. We got to shorten this bad boy up. And it is January 22nd. We are all starved for baseball. And my first reaction was, fuck you, man. Give me baseball right now. Like, I want it bad, right? But I mean, the truth is, they took a snippet of this hour and 12-minute podcast. So I'm sure context matters hugely here, right? And if you do listen a little deeper into this podcast, he does talk about the fact he has 4 kids and his wife, and he's away from them for 8 months a year. And I know, frick, I've been away from my wife for a week on these cruise trips. I tour all the time. I'm always homesick and missing her. By week 1 or 2, I can't even imagine being away for months at a time. Although, I mean, Anthony Rendon, by the way, 7 years, $245 million. If he really wanted his wife and kids along with him, he probably could pull that off. But however you want to spin it. So I do understand a little bit that mindset, but I understand the pushback from baseball fans too, because like we're all avid fans, and we would love for the top players in the game, the guys who are being paid the most, to also love the game like we do. And you could just tell Rendon just doesn't have the passion for the game. In fact, I think he'd hang his cleats up if there wasn't like $100 million waiting for him to play these last 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Joel, what do you think of Rendon's comments? Because like you listen to what he said and then you watch the backlash. Does the punishment meet the crime?
This is the guy who tried to fight a fan last year, right? So probably not the best guy to ask that question to, because he'll literally fight his fan base. Rendon, to me, he had comments before he signed that big deal where his mindset towards the game of baseball was, this is something that I do good. I don't really love the game. I don't go home and watch baseball. I don't go watch the playoffs when we get bounced. That's the type of guy he is. He is good at baseball. I don't think he could care less about it when he's not around it making money. So it's really like, if Trout comes out and Trout's like, oh my God, I can't get through a season, healthy. It's such an arduous grind for me. I really want to play. You would take that and be like, okay, maybe we should look at the season. Must be physically quite debilitating on these players who want to see them healthy. But Rendon is the last person I want to hear that from, because he has literally said, I don't care that much about this game. I'm good at it. I make money doing it. I won a world championship, and there, like you said, I don't know if the passion was ever there the way it is, even for us, to just sit around and talk about the game. He doesn't care.
You don't think Anthony Rendon's gonna host a baseball podcast when his career
I
ends?
really don't think so. I don't think that's
He's not
happening.
replacing Anthony Kratz on or Eric Kratz
I think the
on
other thing,
Foul Territory.
I think, yeah, replace Kratz on foul territory. I think the other thing that kind of rubbed fans the wrong way is that for a man who has played 200 games in the last 4 years and been paid $180 million to do so, to come out and say, I want to play less baseball. It's like you're playing 50 games a year pretty much. Like, how many fewer games can we make this for you? Like, I listen, I know being injured is really tough too. So like, I'm not trying to put like I'm sure it's been a struggle and mentally draining to be this injured for this long and not be able to contribute to your team. But like, just the optics look real bad.
Like $245 million, right? It's like it's somebody who's being paid such a ridiculous amount. It's tied to the Ohtani failure, it's tied to the Trout failure, it's tied
Yeah.
to Pujols, it's tied to Upton and all those terrible contracts that they signed. And the fact that those last 4 years, I think he's hit into more double plays than he's hit doubles.
Yeah.
And it is. So not only is he not on the field, but when he's on the field, he's a shell of the player that he used to be. So, it's not only does he not care to be on the field, but when he's on the field, there's just no production anymore. So it's that like,
and this isn't Byron Buxton where you just feel bad for the guy because you can tell he loves the game. Like Buxton, when he's on the field, is a joy to watch. He's smiling. You can just tell that he's just happy to be there. And I know he's struggled with injuries mightily as well, but he's just a likable guy. So you don't get the same sort of like pushback when he's not on the field because he's a nice dude, right? He loves the game. Anthony Rendon, like you said, Joel, like he literally tried to fight a crowd member.
yeah, the best thing Rendon has done for the Angels was go lefty against Brett Phillips and hit that homer.
Yeah.
Right. That's, I think, the most amazing thing he's done in his tenure with that team. That's not good for a starting third baseman who's been there for almost half a decade.
Not.
Okay. So as much as we rightfully so have been making a fool of Anthony Rendon, can we now acknowledge the fact that he's absolutely right?
Yes, we can also do that. That's kind of the element that I was saying, that if it came really from anybody else, you would accept it, right? You would accept it. Like, but he's just the last person you want to have bring up.
You want to hear that from. Yeah.
It's just not.
162 games is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, from anytime you start doing like expanded playoffs and like shorten the season by a couple weeks, and you always get pushback on like, oh, record books and whatever, right? But like,
yeah, which is fair. It's probably the one negative to it. It does make it tougher.
It is, but it's also like, I think comparing records from different eras is kind of way more impossible than we pretend it is in the first place, right? Like to just like go like before they played night games, like before colored people were allowed to play, like before you were allowed to, like, there's just 100 different things, but it's like, yeah, but it's always been a lot of games. It's like, it's just, I don't know. I think, look, I haven't played many Major League Baseball games myself the last few years, so I might not be the best person to say this, but I hate the workload managementification of professional sports. I'm coining that term right now. I mean, you see it in the NBA all the time.
Yeah.
Right? I don't think you see it in hockey as much yet. football is a short season. Everybody plays all the time unless they're injured, right? But I think with like baseball, we talk about George Springer all the time, right? Got to get
Yeah.
him in the right field. Got to give him those extra days off.
Get him off his feet.
Get him off his feet. We're going to use the DH as a rotating off day for, guys like this and guys like that. And hopefully that. And it's like, I think the common fan, I don't even want to say the casual fan, but I think the common fan has this idea in their head of these guys are better athletes than they've ever been. Like they're better conditioning, their diet and their training staff is like 1,000 times better than it was when Cal Ripken Jr. was playing a million games in a row, right? Like these are spoiled, entitled brats. And I'm of the opinion that it's kind of the exact opposite. Is like, you could take your car out on the highway and you could just drive it for 6 hours until it runs out of gas, right? But if you're out and you're just like redlined, like it's harder on your Lamborghini to just be like driving at max performance 100% of the time with no brakes. Like, so that's where I'm at with these athletes. Is like, yeah, they're better conditioned, but also like they are working
pushing their bodies probably more
to the limits, like have never been seen before. Like, you ever seen some of the, there's a reason that fat pitchers is a stereotype in sports, right? It's like the Kenny Powers of it all, right? It's not a thing anymore. Like, we don't have. Who's your last fat pitcher you could think of? CC Sabathia, maybe?
Yeah.
Right? Bartolo Colon? I mean, because he's 100 and still pitching.
Yeah, our number 5. Yeah.
Scott, before you joined, while we're doing this, you got to hop on Alek Manoah's Instagram and look at the picture in his story.
Right now?
Right now. Joel already looked at it. Tell me how much confidence this gives you in his conditioning here as of January 22nd. It's a picture of him with a kid from his Alek Manoah pitching camp or baseball camp.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. His hair's growing out nicely though. He's got nice curls.
Not all.
Yeah.
He looks
I don't know, man.
Soft, man.
I don't know. I mean, he was always a bigger boy that I don't know, dude. I don't even know what to say about. I was more just joking around when I mentioned Alek Manoah, but yeah, like there's big question marks there. But I agree with you, and I wish I could
with sports though, right? Is like,
yeah,
these guys are pushing themselves harder. I think as fans, I'd rather see George Springer play in 108 games for the Blue Jays if that's the whole season. If we played for 26 weeks and it was 4 games a week, like every week was.
Yeah.
Like how football kind of just like owns Sunday, and it's like Sunday is just all the football teams are playing. Like if baseball did something similar where it was like whatever Thursday through Sunday, like is that your 4-day weekend? But it's just like you're playing one series and it's just the Jays are in Cincinnati for the weekend. That's their 4 games. And it's like everybody has the same schedule. Like I think there would be like almost a nice flow to that where you have your 3 days off, you come in, your 4 starting pitchers. So baseball would never go for it because you're cutting jobs at that point. But like there would be a real beauty to be like, we've got our fucking A lineup today and we're not worried about like giving one of our best players a day off because, well, it's their shitty pitcher on the mound, so we can put out our C+ lineup and hopefully still squeak out a win. It's like I don't think any sports fan wants to see the B+ version of their lineup.
See, this is where I was just going to say, like logically, you're nailing it, Adam. I want baseball every day. This is why I love the baseball season is that. Yeah. And honestly, the one day off when there's a Thursday and there's no Jays game, I'm like, what is this madness?
Yeah, right? It is like, weird.
I watched an interview and I wish I could reference where this was from. It was an old interview with Nolan Ryan. And they were asking him about how often he was throwing as hard as he could. And he was like, never. Like, he's like, but velocity wasn't a thing, right? Like there wasn't a radar gun telling him how fast he's throwing. He's like, you know, he's like, I'd throw as hard as I could when I was trying to hit a guy, but like,
What a great
but for the
answer.
most part, like for the most part, you're going at 80 to 90% max effort, and your goal as a pitcher is to go deep into the game. Your goal as a pitcher is to hit your spots, and things have changed a little, right? Like the bullpens are so deep these days. Velocity is everything's velocity centric at this point when it comes to pitching. I mean, spin rate and a good ghost fork or whatever gets attention here and there, but like for the most part, we know darn well that everyone is after velo because it works.
Yep.
But it does lend to what you were saying about like the Ferrari on the highway redlining, right? Like there's a reason why there's an epidemic of arm injuries in the industry of baseball right now, and it's because these pitchers are redlining constantly.
Yeah.
I like the aspect of like if you're taking away 8 to 10 games and you're building in natural rest spots where you can do an occasional cycle of your pitching rotation where you go 1, 2, 3, 4 back to 1 instead of hitting 5, because there's like nothing like a game where game 1 of the series is 2 guys who are like near 3 ERAs, and then by the end of the series, it's 2 guys who are like 580. And you're like, in hockey, it doesn't go from like, okay, here's your goaltender who's got a 915 save percentage, and now here comes the 615 save percentage goalie who lets in a goal every third shot. It's just like that doesn't exist. So the fact that like when you go from one game where literally the ERAs will double because of what a 5 starter is in baseball. If you're eliminating a little bit of that just improves the quality of the game naturally. It makes the sport that much more competitive by removing that low end aspect of things, and it builds.
And you know what, Joel, to further to your point here, with expansion coming, this really might be the way to save the quality of baseball, right? Because like 2 more teams, you're thinning it out just more.
Water it down that much more, yeah.
Right. It looks more like postseason baseball because in postseason baseball you don't see that 5th starter. Right. You don't see that. So it's just like you don't
see the 4th starter.
No, you don't. Right. So if you kind of make it so there's a little bit more rest days so that the regular season is almost how you build a playoff series, then it's a lot more indicative to the style of play, and then it's not just that kind of shocker that a team does really, really well built like this, but once they get into the playoffs, they're not even close to the same team because they're built to win 162, and they don't have an ace to come in and win game 1. They get bounced.
Who wants to go watch Tanner Roark pitch on a Monday anyways? You know what I mean? Like if it's my 5 versus your 5 and it's a Tuesday, like those are the games where 5,000 people show up.
Yeah.
Anyways,
no, it's true, man. It's true. All right. Should we get to the one piece of baseball news that actually did drop this week? So what's crazy too is that no one was even talking about the Josh Hader market, even though without a doubt he was. I mean, there's Edwin Diaz and then there's probably Josh Hader. Like they really are like 2 of the most impressive closers in baseball consistency wise over the last with Hader. You can go back 9 years. He's been this dominant. I mean, he had that one blip on the radar that kind of screwed his career numbers even, where he like just couldn't he blew like 8 saves in a month span or something like that before the Brewers traded him, and then he completely rebounded. Like he's been just as dominant after he kind of got his footing again, which does show you every baseball player slumps, even if they seem even if it seems like it's impossible for them to do so. This is from Jeff Passan. Star closer Josh Hader and the Houston Astros are in agreement on a 5-year, $95 million contract. You know what I love about this contract? Big money, huge contract, and the media wasn't used to up this, right? there wasn't a bunch of leverage shit going on, or at least not in public knowledge. This was all behind the scenes, and I'm sure there was leverage being used and there were teams being pinned against each other, but it wasn't being committed by John Heyman, who's being given a little bit here by agents just so that the price can go up, right? The deal contains no deferrals. Another thing I love, Houston just paying the man, right? It is the largest present day value contract for a relief pitcher in baseball history. Josh Hader joins the Astros bullpen that already has an elite closer in Ryan Presley. Like, they'll be the best 1-2 punch in baseball. So Hader's deal for $95 million exceeds that of Edwin Diaz's in present dollars. Deferrals took the value of Diaz's $102.5 million deal to around 93.2. So just a little bit more than Diaz with the Mets. One other thing I'll mention here, I know that Passan mentioned Presley and just what a huge 1-2 punch that is for high leverage guys. But honestly, Brian Abreu with the Astros, like, it might literally be the best 1-2-3 punch in all of baseball. And I think there's a real argument to be made that the Astros have the best bullpen in the American League, hands down. Joel, would you say that? Where would you put the Astros bullpen right now?
Oh yeah, I would have to put them one in the American League. Just the fact that you're coming out of the sixth with the lead and you expect to win 95% of your games at that point. Like, that's pretty much what you're doing. Just, you get that lead early and you've got three guys. And it's also that situation where you run out Hader 3 days in a row, and then you're happy to go to Abreu, or you're happy to go to Presley to close out games. So it's going to be a situation where you've got backup closers. Presley's their closer. They're bringing in a new closer.
And Joel Hader is one of those. Hader's one of those rare guys that can go 2 innings here and there.
True, and it's almost like a platoon situation with your closer. You've got 3 righties coming up. Presley's probably going to get the close.
Yeah,
you've got 2 lefties and a righty coming up. Maybe Hader gets that spot. So it's almost situational closer usage depending on what you're up against. It kind of says that. I know that with the deferrals and everything, that Hader's contract's bigger, but it's kind of a situation where if you're like competing for the record, you got to see if the Mets are in go mode or not.
Yeah.
Because if the Mets are spending, then you can probably get that record. If not, then you're going to have to like find your way, you're getting more with deferrals. You've got the record, right? The other thing is Romano. Romano is kind of like the next consistent closer in baseball who's young, who's had success for a nice long period of time. And it makes you think, what are the Jays going to have to pay when his free agency comes up? Because, $95 million for an amazing closer. Is Romano an $80 million closer? Where does he sit?
Now, I'm going to say some things right now that are going to offend some Jays fans, but there's a bunch of idiots out there that truly believe Jordan Romano is not an elite closer, and it drives me nuts. There are people on Twitter that were calling him a 10 to 15 best closer in baseball at best, which is just, listen, if you feel that way, that's your feelings, because you obviously don't know how to read numbers, because you look at the numbers since 2020, and Jordan Romano is literally one of the most dominant closers in all of baseball. He is a top 5 closer without a doubt. Listen to this. So these are relievers who have pitched over 200 innings since 2020. And I do want to say that I am aware ERA is a bad way to value your relief pitchers, right? WHIP is normally a more valuable stat when it comes to, and the reason for that is short sample size. Okay, so we're eliminating short sample size here. These are relievers over 200 innings. This is now, once you get into these big sample sizes, I really believe ERA might be the best stat out there. It just cuts right through the fat. Go ahead, Joel.
To play the ERA is that when you're a closer, it actually is more indicative because you're coming in with clean innings. You're not coming in usually with people on base. So you're not taking on other people's runners and then those runs score, but your runs don't score. So it's just like there's Usually a
Mhm.
situation where you come in to close, that's your inning to come in and close. So ERA is a little bit more indicative for those
Now,
final.
I will also say that Josh Hader, by the way, should be on this list, and he's not. We already talked about how he really blew up his career stats there when he went on that like month and a half long, like he blew 8 saves. I think his ERA was in the tens over that. Like he just couldn't prevent runs for like 6 weeks, and it ruined 9 years of incredible stats. But
Mhm.
that being said, which is the most hilarious baseball thing ever. But that being said, so this is relievers with over 200 innings since 2020. Number one is Devin Williams with the Milwaukee Brewers, a 1.75 ERA, a top closer in baseball, right there with Diaz and Hader without a doubt. Okay. Number two is Emmanuel Clase with a 1.97 ERA. He's probably in that group too, and is probably in the top four. So is Jordan Romano a top five? Yeah, I think he is the fifth best closer after that. His ERA is a 2.29. And then after that, it drops drastically. Rizel Iglesias with the Braves sits at 2.61. AJ Minter with the Braves 2.89. And then after that, it's Kenley Jansen. And now you're into the 3 ERAs. Like Jordan Romano is elite. What he does, yeah, sometimes he makes it so that you gotta breathe. You're breathing heavy, right? He makes you sweat. You know, I made the comparison before for all the '80s Oilers fans out there. He's the Grant Fuhr of closers, right? Like Grant Fuhr, probably a Hall of Fame goaltender. I don't even know if Grant
What's
actually got in there,
what's
but
Romano's ERA the last 5 years?
2.29.
Mariano Rivera's career ERA is 2.21.
Yeah. I mean, I saw
He's been
that
Mariano
comparison
Rivera
on,
for the last 5 years.
like I saw that comparison on Twitter. Of course, Yankees fans lost their fucking mind over it, right? And like tore the kid apart that brought it up, because there was this tweet that was like, who are two comparable number-wise players in sports that one is a hero and one is a heel? And then that was the example. But yeah, Jordan Romano, man. Like, I don't know how you can look at his numbers and think that he's a bust. Like, it just blows me away.
No,
Those
that shocks
dumb Toronto baseball fans that don't understand baseball.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? It's like the amount of people who are like, he always blows it when the game's on the line. It's like, yeah, you fucking
He
idiot.
only
He's a
pitches when
closer.
the game's
That's
on.
the only time he pitches is when the game's on the line. What do you mean he blows it when the game's on the line? Yeah, I know. Like,
That's a great point. That's really sums it up. Really sums it up. By the way, just talking, or to get to the question, I think Joel posed, what will he get paid? Josh Hader, 29 right now. Edwin Diaz, I think 28 when he signed his contract. We have 2 more years of control with Jordan Romano. He'll be 32 as a free agent. So that'll play a role.
Yeah.
But I
But
don't think I'm too worried about age when it comes to closers. Like, you're not giving out a 10-year deal to a closer anyways.
Yeah.
So if it's 32 through 37 of Jordan Romano, I'd still take those ages.
And Romano has continued to improve throughout the years too. You know, like last year he had the most saves he's ever had. At
For me,
32, if he continues with these numbers, I think there's absolutely a 3-year, $50 million deal waiting for Jordan Romano, bare minimum.
for me, this might be like the Joe Simpleton of me as a dumb Toronto baseball fan. But we talked whip versus ERA, evaluating a closer, and what, for me, it is only save related. It is saves, and maybe if I'm looking broadly, save percentage. Like if a guy has, if 2 closers both have 40 saves and one of them is 40 for 40 and the other one's 40 for 45, like he has 5 blown saves and just many saves, that, that'll be a tiebreaker for me. But it is only saves is the only thing that I care about as far as evaluating a closer. And that I know that that's not fair because save opportunities is kind of out of their control and whatever. But for me, it comes down to, like, if he's the closer on a good team, like if a good team wants a good closer, right? So like, if Josh Hader's going to get 50 saves for the Astros next year, yeah, it's because he's the best closer in baseball. Like, I don't know what we're arguing about here. Like, we thought
No, and
because
Chapman,
he has 50. I don't mean like we arguing. I just mean like, as baseball fans, broadly speaking, in the Royal sense, like, yeah, how many saves did they get? Oh, okay. Well, he was the closer on a bad team. Oh, well, I guess that says how good he is then. Like, if you're the closer for the Boston Red Sox right now, maybe you're not that good of a closer. You know what I mean? Like, that's for me, that's the argument as far as like a guy that is a closer and doesn't have as many saves. It's like, oh yeah, but he's on a bad team. Well, if he was better, he'd be on a good team. Period. Like,
this is a little out of left field, but what do you guys think? Where do you slot Tim Meza in the pecking order of the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen?
Number one against lefties. So it's just like, to me, it's situational about what's coming up in the lineup for the opposing team, right? If we're talking about slotting them with 3 righties coming up, I don't slot them very high, but if 2 out of the 3 batters coming up are lefties, I'm putting them, pretty darn high on the list. The specialist role is gone, but it's not completely gone. There's ways to, properly use him, especially more like.
Can I read the depth chart right now? Just so that anybody that's not familiar of who we retained, who's still here, who we added, whatever. Currently for our bullpen, we've got Jordan Romano. This is no particular order. This is just MLB.com listing. Jordan Romano, Eric Swanson, Tim Meza, Chad Green, Jimmy Garcia, Trevor Richards, Genesis Cabrera.
And Yariel.
Oh, yeah. Yariel Rodriguez, sure.
And what's kind of interesting is that if you were to just put it on the depth chart, I only bring this up, and I'm with you, Joel, on the situational use of Tim Meza, but it probably goes Jordan Romano, Chad Green, Eric Swanson, Tim Meza is number 4. And I say that only to pump the tires of Tim Meza here, whose 2023 numbers were posted recently. And I knew these numbers and had forgotten how good they were. In 69 appearances, he had a 3-1 record, a 1.52 ERA, 53 and a third innings, 53 Ks, a 2.1 wins above replacement, tied with Jordan Romano for the best as a Jays reliever. Like, for your number 4 in your depth chart to be putting up those kind of numbers, and I'm not expecting him to replicate that because relievers are a yo-yo up and down with numbers, and obviously there's a lot. The truth is that if Tim Meza had been blowing up once last year, those numbers wouldn't look so good. So like, there is some perspective to be put on those, but pretty solid numbers for a guy that is most likely only gonna,
having that talent of righties around him allows you to use him properly, right? You put him in situations where he doesn't succeed. So, kudos to the staff around him that he's able to be used properly, and you don't really have those blow up situations because he's so used. The situations that he's put in are exactly what he needs to succeed. So.
I'm not saying the Jays pen is in the same category as the Astros, but do you guys feel like they're a top 3 to 4 bullpen in the American League right now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and my only pushback with the pecking order that you gave there is, for me, Eric Swanson's above Chad Green.
And that's fair.
He's my number 2. I think Chad Green maybe historically is better if you look at career numbers. I don't know. I know he's coming off of injury, so last year's numbers aren't necessarily a fair indicative of who he is, but a 5.25 ERA and a 1.33 WHIP for Chad Green versus a 2.97 ERA and a 1.095 for Eric Swanson. Plus Swanson had more saves, so there you go. I have by the end of this season, Chad Green might be a absolute monster in this bullpen for the team, and whatever. But just as it stands right now, January 22nd, 2024, for whatever that's worth, it's Romano, then Swanson, then Meza, and then Chad Green after that. I might even have Trevor Richards ahead of him, but yeah, I think this is a good.
Oh yeah,
I think
Trevor Richards. I always forget Trevor Richards.
I don't know if he's going to be good next year.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll even be in the pen next year. We'll see, because they've got a pretty deep system going on right now.
But yeah, as far as where does this bullpen stack up against the rest of the league, I think, again, our pitching staff is going to be fucking stellar from tip to taint. So I'm happy with it.
And honestly, we don't know what Yariel will be. Like, that guy is coming off a 1 ERA in Japan. His stuff profiles, his fastball is exceptional. His slider is one of the best in baseball in any league. So who knows where he ends up slotting in? And they're giving him the majority of the money out of the bullpen. So you've got
which was an interesting decision. Absolutely. Anything to add here? I figured we'd end on a bunch of like kind of fun stats that I'd had dug up here.
Just before we do, because I'm going to forget this if I don't. When we talked about Anthony Rendon and what would he do to change the game, to bring this back to hockey, I was watching TikTok last night, and I saw a highlight of an Al McInnes slap shot that I think it was against the Kings, and it like went off the crossbar and then broke a pane of glass behind the net. And I was just thinking of like how awesome it always is when the glass breaks in hockey, and how like the NHL for sure, this is my opinion here, but the NHL for sure should just put up like one random pane of like weaker glass. Maybe it's behind the net, just like every arena for every game. There's just a weak one. And like, don't like advertise it. Don't tell it to the fans or anybody. Don't tell it to the players. Just in secret, make one weak. A body check that just fucking goes right through the glass. A slap shot that explodes one behind the net. Like, I don't care if it doesn't happen every game, but like there needs to be 20 broken panes of glass across a season for every team. Like,
as an 8-year-old Flames fan, Al McInnes was.
I knew you'd like the Al McInnes reference.
He was just a big, skinny guy with a huge stick that could, like, man, his slap shot was insane. Anyway.
So with that in mind, with that crazy rule suggestion, that NHL should behind the scenes tamper with their plexiglass to make the game more entertaining. What would the baseball equivalent of that be? You don't have to come up with something, but next time we talk, think of something for baseball that would just like be a secret change that like would make the game a little bit better. And don't tell me it's like one random juiced baseball, because they're already doing that.
That was my first thought. I'm like, they're already doing that, Adam.
just one ball that literally explodes on contact.
No. I like the idea of like one pitch a game. You give it a 2-mile-an-hour bump. Everyone's like 107 miles an hour.
That's totally what you could do. You'd be like, we're just gonna fudge the radar gun. We're just gonna every once in a while we're gonna just put it up on the board as 107. Just blow people's minds. Okay. So let's get to your fun wacky stats then.
Let's end on this. How often runners went from first to third on singles in 2023? The Atlanta Braves above all of baseball, 41% of the time when there was a runner on first and somebody hit a single, they went to third base almost half the time, which is just insane. Baltimore is second at 38%, Arizona 36%, Cleveland 35%, 34% of the time Detroit, Pittsburgh, San Diego, Cincinnati, KC, Tampa Bay, Dodgers, Seattle, and then 30% of the time Minnesota, Toronto, Boston, Oakland, the Yankees, which is impressive. Toronto did it 30% of the time when you've got Alejandro Kirk and Brandon Belt on your team. So that hurt your numbers. What's interesting though is take a stab in the dark. Who did it the least at 25% of the time
This is just runners go from first to third on a single.
on a single? Which team in baseball was the worst at this?
The worst, the Boston Red Sox.
The Texas Rangers, World Series champions.
Oh,
Which
interesting.
does go to show you sometimes those little extra 90 feet, it's better to not just run into and out. Little money ball there. Okay, so this next one is most home runs in a game his team lost, 2021 through 2023.
Carlos Delgado.
Shohei Ohtani, well, 2021 to 2023.
Right. Okay.
Shohei Ohtani had 53 home runs in games that his team lost. Pete Alonso had 46. So, like, Shohei Ohtani is head and shoulders above everyone else. Pete Alonso at 46. Christian Walker had 45 home runs with the most losses that his team has had. Sal Perez with 43. Perez, no surprise when you play for the Royals. And then Kyle Schwarber with 42.
Interesting.
Just an interesting stat. I don't know. Okay.
That stat reminds me of like pushback that Vladdy gets. I don't know where in our comment section this came up in the last couple of weeks, but we were talking about Vladdy and a bounce back season from him. And someone commented, my apologies for not remembering who it was, but it was like, oh, Vladdy only hits home runs in games that like were either
Garbage
up
time.
by 10 or down by 10. Yeah, garbage time. Like, but it's a crapshoot. Like hitting dingers is just, you can't control when they happen. And I think Shohei having the most in losses is a good indication of that. But nobody shits on Shohei Ohtani for having a big game on a bad team. So
it's a situation too there where a lot of that they're hitting Ohtani in the two hole, and there's probably nobody on for him. So a lot of those home runs are solos, and
there'd
probably be a few more wins if there were some people on base when he hit those home runs. Same
but
thing.
Anthony Rendon is injured, and
that's right.
Doing podcasts about wanting to play less. Yeah.
I just picture the pep talk Anthony Rendon's giving his kids though, where he's like, "You guys got to listen to me, follow your heart. You got to do what you love for work, and you'll never work a day in your life." Unlike me, I had to slog it out in the majors, just punching the clock.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm doing this so you don't have to.
I'm doing this so you don't have to. Anthony Rendon. That is too funny. I love that. Okay. Longest active streak of seasons with at least one stolen base. So these are guys that are still playing. So right now, Andrew McCutchen and Elvis Andrus are at 15 years in a row with at least one stolen base, which I know one doesn't seem like a lot, but to do it consecutively like that, not have injuries get in the way, all of these sort of things, it is pretty impressive. Jason Hayward has 14 years under his belt with one stolen base, and then 13 has quite a few players: Trout, Altuve, Freeman, Goldschmidt, Crawford, and Blackman.
I think that's actually like an important stat, because I look at a guy like Carlos Correa who hasn't stolen a base in 4 years. And to me, that was like a big sign, like, don't go after this guy long-term. His legs are already shot. The guy can't even run. 27. He's not stealing bases anymore.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what kind of range are you going to have if you're incapable of running? You know? So it's something that like the legs are indicative of your longevity in this game. As soon as your legs go, and like McCutchen's a great example of a guy.
I was just gonna say McCutchen, like,
right, like his legs have kept him productive into his late 30s, and you know, Ricky Henderson is the perfect example of somebody who kept his legs underneath him and stayed effective well into his mid 40s. So yeah, I feel like that's an important stat. You know, keeping your athleticism, keeping those legs underneath you, and it keeps you an athlete. It keeps you on the field.
So the last stat I have here is basically, can you keep your bat speed up into your mid to late 30s? Longest active streak of seasons with at least one home run. Now, I know that this guy is retiring, but Nelson Cruz has 18 years in a row with a home run under his belt, which is honestly insane. It's honestly insane. Canadian, maybe even a Hall of Famer, Joey Votto has 17 under his belt. Evan Longoria has 16. Andrew McCutchen has 15. And then Freddie Freeman, Giancarlo Stanton, Jason Hayward, and Carlos Santana have 14 under their belt. So doesn't really mean anything, but kind of an interesting little stat.
I like
Yeah.
it. Before we go, I got one question for Joel that came in from last week's mailbag. That I think Joel will be good to answer this. So this one came in from Mark Drebert. I don't know. Says, I asked this last year when I was a simple Twitter peasant, but now that I'm part of the Patreon upper class society, I'll throw it back to you. Is there a stat in baseball that shows how often a hitter gets himself into scoring position without the help of his teammates? For example, he hits a double or a triple, that's on him, or he hits a single or walks and then steals second. I couldn't find anything for myself. It felt like the Blue Jays ended 3,000 innings last season by grounding into double plays, and it would be nice to have more guys in the lineup getting past first base. Unfortunately, similar to my dating life. So, Joel, do you have an answer for that?
I don't believe that there is a singular stat right now that says this is how many times a player has gotten into scoring position on their own. I like that idea for a stat, though. It says a lot. And the to play onto that is we've talked about how last year was a push for speed with Kiermaier and Witt and having guys on the team that were a little bit faster. But we always talk about the fact that you had two guys who could not move, and that kind of contradicts that ability to go first to third. So that drastically affected that stat, drastically affected the amount of double plays that we hit into last year. So yeah, I completely understand the futility of putting a guy on just to get two outs. And it's a situation where if we can bring ourselves up 5-6% in the ability to go first to third on base hits and cut that amount 15% down on the double plays, that's going to go a long way. It's going to go a long way, and it's not about picking up a new player. It might just be about letting one player not stay on the team. And that kind of, I think, has a big reason why we brought up we need another bat. We need another lefty bat. Why aren't we looking at Brandon Belt? Because we can't have two guys on the team that literally undercut your speed. So that's kind of.
And I love Belt.
Me too. It's just that situation can't.
It's just that situation. Like
who's the other guy on the team that log jams
Kirk.
the running? Kirk.
Okay.
The only way I can see Brandon Belt being a viable option is if he's purely a pinch hitter coming off the bench. He gives them a 1 year, $2 million, $3 million deal. Like, that's the thing, right?
Like a Matt Stairs situation.
A Matt Stairs situation. Like Brandon Belt at $11 million, where you're trying to get him into the lineup every day. I just can't stomach those two on the base pass. And again, I'm a Kirky fan. I'm a Belt fan. I just
Brandon Belt pinch hitting for Matt Chapman in the 9th. We love.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this also two incredibly slow guys and one incredibly incompetent guy in Vladdy on the bases too. So it's just like 33% of your runners are atrocious at running. So you just
this was the point I made about the Texas Rangers with the lowest percentage of going first to third, is that the Jays management made such a big deal out of attention to detail, and then they were god awful on the base path. The amount of times where I honestly was like, let's moneyball this shit station to station, never fricking take another 90 feet, because they just keep running into outs. And I know that this is feeling based a little too, after I gave everyone shit for your feelings not matter. Read the stat that's because obviously the stats showed the Jays were competent at going first to third. But how many outs did they run into where it just was like morale killers, right? Like you're down by one. Like even, and I hate to harp on it, but going back to runners on second and third, one out,
Vladdy get
down
pissed
by
off.
2 in the wild card, and Vladdy gets picked off. Like, are you kidding me? Like, anyways, but
Is that immaturity? Is that a lack of baseball IQ? Is that
I think it could happen
what
to
is it
anyone.
with Vladdy?
I don't know
You say
if it's
it
Vladdy's.
can happen to anybody. I don't see that happening to Corey Seager.
I mean, it did bum me out to hear that it was through PitchCom that it was done. You know, like it's like, okay, but you're right. I can't see that happening to Corey Seager either.
And
Like-
it's it's picked off, but it's the times where he comes around first base going for second and is done by 15, 20 feet.
Yeah.
And it's massive. And you're like, why are you trying to get your extra base hits with your legs?
Yeah.
Why are you trying to do that? Like
Yeah.
that's just
No,
it's
I love the aggressive approach, but I agree. Like when he's thrown out by so far, or he rounds first by a mile and then needs to head back, and it's like it's always scary every time he rounds first and has to head back. But like, is that do you think that's, you know, when you look at the Blue Jays season as a whole last year, you know, we can say attention to detail or whatever, but like, is it more the approach was the issue, or was it just like tough luck? Like, do you think if we
I think
didn't
a little
change
of both.
anything going into this season, do you think the numbers are just better? Because it just felt like, you know, every time it could go wrong, it did go wrong. We were never getting a bounce that went our way. Or is it just that, like, no, the bounce never went our way because of like low baseball IQ, and no one was telling Vladdy, oh, don't run on Randy Arozarena because he has a good, or whoever it, you know, like, if you pull one down the left field line, this left fielder has a soft arm, so go for it. Versus this left fielder has a fucking laser beam. Let's just hold up at one. Like, what do you guys think? Is that more, or is that just on Vladdy saying, I got a green light no matter what? I'm just gonna. It's a vibe check as I round one. Like,
for Vladdy, it's experience and all of that stuff. Like I don't sit there and go look back at all those times that like David Ortiz was getting picked off. I don't remember any of those instances. And that guy was similar type slugger, big slugger, not getting picked off. So the fact that Vladdy is turning the idea that Vladdy started losing weight and some aspiration to be a base stealer came into his head, like that needs to go away. That aggressiveness on the base paths, just it's not about him. His game is not getting an extra 90 feet on the base paths. That's not what he's about. But then tie that in with Belt and Kirk and their inability to run, and tie that in with Witt aging out a little bit and stealing 20-something bases, but doing it at like a 70% clip, which isn't that efficient. So it's kind of a mixture of older guys not having the wheels, slow guys who don't have any wheels at all, and young guys who don't really, they shouldn't be wheeling and dealing. That's not what their game is about. So it's kind of a mixture of kind of all those things in one. And
because you don't see it out of Bo. You look at Bo's sprint speed in 2020. These are kind of off the top of my head here, so there's a few discrepancies when it comes to the actual number. But he was around 76% in 2020 in the league for sprint speed, 66 in 2021, 52 in 2022, and 46 in 2023. But at no point was I like, how is Bo getting thrown out at second again? Like he just wasn't that guy, right? Like he kind of knows his skill set and his strengths, and he sprayed the ball around the field and got his doubles in the way that a guy like him should get his doubles, and you know, got his extra base hits in ways that a dude with that kind of swing should be aiming to get their extra base hits. And I think Vladdy, very much like Joel touched on 2 minutes ago, said, you know, like he was slumping. he was getting looking at his hard hit rate and being like, well, I'm just unlucky. And then, when you're in those sort of scenarios, yeah, you can bury yourself a little bit trying to stretch singles into doubles with legs you probably shouldn't be doing that with. And I think that's an experience thing. I think that's a youth thing. I know everyone's going to hear this, or, well, I guess it's Patreon, so we're pretty safe. But, if this was a public show, everyone would be coming at me with, oh, he's not a rookie anymore. Like, my God, how many chances are you going to give this guy? It's like, well, he is still 24. Sorry. Like, fucking deal with it. He's not even 25 till April. Like, what are we upset about here? I don't know. This year is huge, though, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm not giving Vladdy a pass. Like, if Vladdy repeats 2022 again or 2023 again this year, maybe we got to reevaluate everything.
Yikes.
All right, let's end it on that.